I'm just going to ask you point blank. Did you kill Katie?
No.
Okay. Do you know who killed her?
No.
October 24th, 2016. Simpsonville, South Carolina, a quiet town of just over 20,000 residents, where neighbors know each other by name and violent crime rarely makes headlines. That evening, 22-year-old Catherine Ann Blauvelt finished her shift at the local pet store and texted friends that she'd meet them later. When hours passed, with no word from the normally punctual and reliable young woman, concern quickly escalated to fear. 2 days later, in the basement of an abandoned house, detectives made a discovery that would shock the entire community. Katie's body lay hidden in a concrete box, folded, just like you would see in a horror movie. Her life extinguished by multiple stab wounds, a methodical, brutal killing that suggested not just violence, but premeditation. As news spread through Simpsonville, residents locked their doors and questioned their safety. But within hours, investigators began focusing on someone Katie had once trusted completely, her estranged husband, John Blauvelt, a U.S. Army recruiter who later vanished from town along with his 17-year-old girlfriend. What followed was one of the most extensive manhunts in South Carolina history, a 6-year pursuit across multiple states that would reveal a disturbing pattern of escalating domestic violence, manipulation, and betrayal. The case of Katie Blauvelt serves as a stark reminder that sometimes the greatest danger lies not with strangers, but with those we once loved and trusted. If this is your first time on our channel, consider subscribing now for in-depth explorations of cases that shine light on overlooked warning signs and critical lessons that might save lives. Hit that subscribe button and notification bell, because understanding these stories could help protect someone you know. Catherine Ann Blauvelt, known to everyone as Katie, was born on August 8, 1994, in Mountville, South Carolina. With bright eyes and an easy smile, those who knew her describe a young woman who radiated warmth and natural kindness. Katie grew up in a loving blended family. After her parents, Patricia Ann and Richard Boyer, divorced, her mother remarried Daniel Peaver, bringing 4 stepsisters and another stepbrother into Katie's life. Rather than feeling displaced, friends say Katie embraced her expanded family circle, displaying an early capacity for adaptability and connection that would define her throughout her short life. She was sunshine in human form, recalled one childhood friend. Katie had this gift, where she could make anyone feel comfortable within minutes of meeting her. This inherent sociability served her well as she progressed through school in South Carolina. Though not particularly drawn to academics, Katie found her passion elsewhere, in her profound love for animals. This affinity led her to a position at a pet store in Greenville County after completing her education. At work, Katie was known for her exceptional care of the animals and her ability to match them with perfect owners. Colleagues remember how she would spend extra time with anxious or sick animals, often staying beyond her shift to ensure their comfort. Her supervisor once noted that Katie had an almost intuitive understanding of each animal's needs, a skill that can't be taught. Beyond her professional life, Katie harbored dreams of creating a peaceful, loving home. She spoke often to friends about wanting children someday, and perhaps opening a small business that would combine her entrepreneurial spirit with her love for animals. She envisioned a sanctuary where rescued animals could heal, while connecting with people who needed emotional support. Initially, Katie had attempted to follow a different path by joining the military, but a spinal condition led to a medical discharge, closing that chapter before it fully began. Adaptable as always, she pivoted to building her life in Simpsonville. Her personal possessions told the story of someone who treasured connections. Photo albums, meticulously maintained, handwritten letters saved in decorative boxes, and little mementos from friends adorning her personal space. Her dog Jupiter was her constant companion, offering the unconditional love she so freely gave to others. In a community where people often define themselves by achievements or possessions, Katie stood out for her authentic presence and genuine interest in others. She volunteered at local animal shelters whenever time permitted and dreamed of one day organizing community fundraisers that would benefit both animals and people in need. Behind every crime statistic is a human being with hopes, dreams, and connections. Katie Blauvelt was not just a victim in a tragic case. She was a daughter, sister, friend, and caretaker whose absence created a void that could never be filled. John Tufton Blauvelt presented himself to the world as the embodiment of military discipline and patriotic duty. As a U.S. Army recruiter based in Greenville County, South Carolina, he projected an image of structure, reliability, and respectability. His uniform commanded automatic respect in a community where military service was highly valued. Colleagues described John as charismatic and persuasive, qualities that served him well in recruiting young people into military service. He could be charming when needed, articulate when required, and displayed a confident demeanor that rarely revealed what lay beneath. John and Katie met in 2014, and their courtship progressed quickly. Friends recall Katie being drawn to his apparent stability and the promise of building a future together. Within months, they married, with Katie embracing her new role as a military wife with characteristic optimism. At first, they seemed happy, remembered one family friend. John appeared protective and attentive. Katie believed she had found her partner for life. But the facade soon began to crack. What started as small controlling behaviors, checking her phone, questioning her whereabouts, limiting her time with friends, gradually intensified. John's military precision extended into their home life in disturbing ways, with rigid expectations about household management and social interactions. By early 2016, a troubling new element entered their marriage. Hannah Thompson, a 17-year-old high school student, became increasingly present in John's life. What began as casual interactions soon evolved into an inappropriate relationship between the 27-year-old Army recruiter and the teenage girl. John transformed the couple's home into what neighbors called a party house, frequently hosting gatherings where underage drinking occurred. Katie found herself marginalized in her own home, while John's attention focused increasingly on Hannah. Former friends of John noted behavioral red flags that, in retrospect, signaled dangerous instability. He displayed rapid mood swings, moving from calculated charm to cold anger without warning. He spoke of Katie with growing resentment, particularly after being demoted in the Army, a setback he blamed entirely on her. Most concerning were the threats. Prosecutors would later present evidence, including a to-do list showing where John had written, "Get rid of Katie," even attempting to hire someone to help harm her. Internet searches on his devices revealed inquiries about knife sharpening and spousal death, digital footprints of premeditation. Have you ever encountered someone whose public persona dramatically differed from their private behavior? Share your experiences in the comments. Understanding these contradictions might help someone identify warning signs before a situation turns dangerous. As John's relationship with Katie deteriorated and his involvement with Hannah deepened, the stage was set for a tragedy that would forever change multiple lives. The marriage between Katie and John Blauvelt began deteriorating almost immediately after their wedding. What friends initially viewed as normal adjustment difficulties soon revealed themselves as warning signs of abuse. Within the first few months, the power dynamics shifted dramatically, with John asserting control over increasingly personal aspects of Katie's life. "She changed," recalled a childhood friend. "That light she always had. It dimmed. She began checking her phone constantly, worried about missing his texts. She'd cancel plans at the last minute if he decided he wanted her home." By late 2015, their shared home had transformed into what neighbors referred to as a party house. John regularly invited groups of young people over, including numerous teenagers. Alcohol flowed freely, inappropriate relationships formed, and Katie found herself increasingly isolated within her own house. Neighbors reported loud music until early morning hours, seeing unfamiliar cars parked outside, and occasionally witnessing arguments spill onto the front lawn. The situation escalated in February 2016 when Cady reported a frightening incident to local authorities. According to police records, she stated that during an argument, John had pointed a gun directly at her and threatened her life. This incident resulted in formal charges of domestic violence against John, a critical moment that should have offered protection, but instead may have intensified his resentment. Around the same period, John faced additional legal trouble for contributing to the delinquency of a minor, stemming from his relationship with 17-year-old Hannah Thompson. The compounding legal issues, combined with a demotion at work, created a pressure cooker environment in the Blauvelt household. Text messages recovered from Cady's phone revealed her growing fear. "He's getting worse," she wrote to a close friend. "I don't know what he might do anymore." In mid-2016, Cady made the brave decision to separate from John. She moved some belongings to her parents' home and began the process of rebuilding her independence. Research shows this period of separation represents the most dangerous time for victims of domestic abuse, when the abuser's sense of control is threatened. John's reaction to the separation was telling. He alternated between attempts to win Cady back and expressions of rage at her decision. In conversations with Hannah Thompson, he referred to Cady as the problem that needed to be solved. What Cady viewed as her first step toward freedom became unknown to her, the trigger for a deadly sequence of events. Monday, October 24, 2016, began as an ordinary workday for Cady Blauvelt. She arrived at the pet store for her shift, interacting with customers throughout the day and leaving in the evening. This would be the last time anyone would see her alive. When Cady's mother hadn't heard from her the next day, she reported her missing to the Simpsonville Police Department. A search began almost immediately, with family, friends, and local volunteers combing areas Cady frequently visited. Her abandoned car was located in a grocery store parking lot, approximately 1 mile from her workplace, with her purse still inside. But no sign of Cady. On Wednesday, October 26th, 2 days after her disappearance, the search took a devastating turn. Investigators, following a tip about locations Cady had frequented in her youth, entered an abandoned house on Southeast Main Street in Simpsonville. In the basement, partially concealed in a concrete enclosure, they discovered Cady's body. The crime scene revealed a brutality that shocked even veteran investigators. Cady had been stabbed multiple times, with wounds concentrated in her neck and upper torso. The position and depth of the wounds indicated knowledge of how to inflict maximum damage. The medical examiner would later determine that some of the wounds were defensive, suggesting Cady had fought for her life. Forensic evidence indicated she had been killed elsewhere and transported to the abandoned house, suggesting planning and familiarity with the location. A partial fingerprint and DNA evidence collected from the scene provided investigators with their first crucial leads. Within hours of discovering Cady's body, attention turned to her estranged husband, John Blauvelt. As investigators processed the crime scene, evidence rapidly mounted against John Blauvelt. Cell phone records placed him near the abandoned house on the evening of Cady's disappearance. His own phone revealed disturbing internet searches, including how to sharpen knives and what happens when your spouse dies. A journal entry recovered from their home contained what prosecutors would later describe as a confession to the crime. Most damning was a text message sent from John to Hannah Thompson at 5:17 p.m. on October 24th, containing just 3 words: "She's gone now." By the time police prepared to make an arrest, John had already fled. Within 24 hours of being questioned about Cady's death, John Blauvelt and Hannah Thompson had crossed state lines, abandoning his military post and effectively disappearing. The U.S. Army officially classified John as a deserter, adding federal resources to the search. Investigators discovered the pair had traveled west in John's truck, making brief stops in Tennessee, Arkansas, and New Mexico. Using surveillance footage from gas stations and motels, authorities tracked their movement to El Paso, Texas, before losing their trail. In December 2016, a significant break occurred when Hannah Thompson was found alone in Eugene, Oregon. Just 17 years old, and now classified as a missing person herself, Hannah told investigators that John had abandoned her weeks earlier after growing paranoid about being recognized. She provided critical information about their escape route, but claimed no knowledge of John's current location. Hannah was charged as an accessory after the fact for her role in helping John flee. She told investigators that while she hadn't participated in Cadi's murder, she had helped John cover his tracks by disposing of evidence and providing an alibi. For the next 5 years, despite being featured on national fugitive shows and added to the U.S. Marshals' Most Wanted list, John Blauvelt remained at large. Reported sightings came from across the country: California, Washington, Montana, Colorado, but each lead eventually went cold. He had effectively vanished. The breakthrough finally came in July 2022, when a tip from a coworker led authorities to Medford, Oregon. There, living under the alias Ben Klein and working at a retail store, was John Blauvelt. After nearly 6 years on the run, he was taken into custody without incident. After nearly 6 years as a fugitive, John Blauvelt's freedom came to an abrupt end in July 2022. U.S. Marshals, acting on a tip from a suspicious coworker, surrounded a small apartment complex in Medford, Oregon. The man, who called himself Ben Klein, now sporting a beard and longer hair, surrendered without resistance. His fingerprints confirmed what authorities already knew. The 6-year manhunt was finally over. John was extradited to South Carolina to face justice for Cadi's murder. The trial, which began in September 2024, presented jurors with overwhelming evidence of his guilt. Prosecutors methodically built their case. Cell phone records placed John at the crime scene. Forensic evidence included a partial DNA match recovered from beneath Cadi's fingernails. Digital records revealed his incriminating searches about knife sharpening and spousal death, and the journal entry that prosecutors described as a confession. Perhaps most compelling was testimony from multiple witnesses who recounted John's threats against Cadi in the weeks before her murder. Hannah Thompson, now in her 20s, testified against John as part of a plea agreement for her own charges. Her account of their relationship and escape provided jurors with insight into John's manipulative nature and calculated planning. After just 4 hours of deliberation, the jury returned with a unanimous verdict: guilty of murder and possession of a weapon during a violent crime. The judge sentenced John to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As the verdict was read, Cadi's family embraced one another. Her mother, Patricia, who had attended every day of the trial, addressed reporters afterward. "Nothing brings Cadi back to us, but knowing her killer will never walk free again gives us some measure of peace." The Simpsonville community, many of whom had joined searches for Cadi years earlier, gathered for a memorial service to mark the conclusion of a case that had haunted the town for nearly a decade. The murder of Cadi Blauvelt stands as a stark reminder that domestic violence often follows recognizable patterns before escalating to deadly outcomes. Mental health professionals who reviewed this case identified several warning signs that were evident months before the murder. First was isolation. John systematically reduced Cadi's contact with supportive friends and family, a common tactic abusers use to increase control and dependency. Next came intimidation through displays of weapons, verbal threats, and physical aggression. The incident where John pointed a gun at Cadi represented a critical moment when intervention might have prevented tragedy. The most dangerous time in an abusive relationship is when the victim attempts to leave, explains Dr. Karen Thompson, a domestic violence researcher. That's when the abuser feels control slipping away and may resort to extreme measures. For those experiencing domestic violence, resources exist in every community. The National Domestic Violence Hotline provides 24/7 confidential support. Local women's shelters offer emergency housing and legal advocacy. Family justice centers provide comprehensive services under one roof. Workplace policies increasingly include domestic violence leave and support. We couldn't save Kati, says her former coworker who now volunteers with domestic violence survivors. But her story has helped dozens of local women recognize danger and find safety before it's too late. The ripple effects of a single domestic homicide extend far beyond the immediate family. Children witness violence, neighbors live with guilt about not intervening, friends mourn lives cut short, and communities lose faith in protective systems. If you've experienced domestic violence and found your way to safety, consider sharing what helped you. Your journey might create a roadmap for someone still trapped in the cycle of abuse. Catherine Ann Blauvelt never reached her 23rd birthday. She never opened the animal sanctuary she dreamed about, never had the children she hoped for, never saw the full life that should have been hers. What remains is not just the story of how she died, but the memory of how she lived, with kindness, genuine care for others, and a special connection to animals that couldn't speak for themselves. For every case that ends in headlines, thousands more remain hidden behind closed doors. Victims often remain silent, trapped by fear, financial dependence, or misplaced hope that things will improve. Let Kati's story remind us to look deeper, listen more carefully, and respond more decisively when we suspect someone is suffering. The life you save by recognizing these warning signs might be someone you know. It might even be someone you love. Please don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more in-depth explorations of true crime cases that offer valuable lessons.